It's very high tech.
She heard, yeah. Sorry. Communication system.
When all else fails, yell. Okay, we'll call this to order. We'll start with the opening prayer. Stephen Robert.
Let us begin in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Now the disciples had forgotten to bring any bread, and they had only one loaf with them in the boat. And he cautioned them, saying, "Watch out, beware of the yeast of the Pharisees and the yeast of Herod." They said to one another, "Is it because we have no bread?" And becoming aware of it, Jesus said to them, "Why are you talking about having no bread? Do you still not perceive or understand? Are your hearts hardened? Do you have eyes and fail to see? Do you have ears and fail to hear? And do you not remember when I broke the 5 loaves for the 5,000? How many baskets full of broken pieces did you collect?" They said to him, 12. "And the 7 for the 4,000, how many baskets full of broken pieces did you collect?" And they said, 7. Then he said to them, "Do you not yet understand?" The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ.
I apologize. Introductory prayer. Lord, we know you have worked in our lives, and yet we take so little account of it. Just knowing the truth of your presence in our past would be enough to convert our hearts totally to a future of commitment to you. Knowing your history will make us long for you. We hunger for goodness that will make this day fruitful in ways that will last, that will not deceive us. We intend to not let our mundane passions leave us blind before the opportunity to be your apostles today.
Missing the foundation. Is it because we have no bread? We can see how easily it is to miss the messages God wishes to send us in prayer because we're preoccupied only with what is immediate. We can be hungry for success, want a friend or family member to make peace with us, or we can become obsessed over finances. The insecure heart is pulled away from a healthy vision of life because it's not founded on the rock. The soul that lives from the true foundation knows that as long as it has Christ and is doing his will, all is well.
Remembering the works of God. And do you not remember? One of the worst sins of the people of Israel was to have forgotten God's great work on their behalf. It is important to reflect upon and with gratitude on the many blessings we have received from our Lord. Each of us should remember it is God who created us and who has begun the work of our holiness. If he has brought us this far with only the modest amount of cooperation on our part, how much farther could we go if we were to give him our total dedication? How much more would flourish in our lives? How many problems would find God's hand shaping them for our benefit?
On any given day, every follower of Christ should have a healthy mistrust of what he thinks is the absolute need for his life. Oftentimes, a spiritual detox is in order to free us from becoming obsessed over secondary goals. This detox is found in the school of prayer. St. Augustine notes, prayer is where we exercise desire, where we let our heart purify itself from its distractions, and where we let affection and devotion for the beloved expand. The fire of divine love can heal many divisions and complexes in our psychology if we consistently open ourselves up to it.
Conversation with Christ. Lord, keep us from that spiritual anorexia that makes us lose the hunger for your presence in our lives. We can let daily pressures and disordered passions block our ability to love you as we should. How we endanger ourselves and how we destroy our happiness in this world of illusion. Free us, Jesus, from our own folly. Give us back the hunger to love you again, as we promise never again to let ourselves be carried away by activism and pride.
Together.
My Lord Jesus, may our feet journey together, may our hands gather in unity, may our hearts beat in unison, may our souls be in harmony, may our thoughts be as one, may our ears listen to the silence together, may our glances profoundly penetrate each other, may our lips pray together to gain mercy from the eternal Father. Amen.
Okay, land acknowledgement.
Before we begin, the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education would like to acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional land of the Blackfoot people, who have welcomed here for centuries the Cree, the Métis, other First Nations, and non-Indigenous people. The land is now recognized as the traditional territory of Treaty 7 to the north, west, and south, and Treaty 4 to the east. The Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education also wishes to thank the First Nations people, past and present, for welcoming us here.
Thank you. We don't have any presentations. So approval of the minutes, does everybody have a chance to look at them? If so, we'll get a,
To make an addition, 11.6. Do we have that on it? Okay.
Just on the, after the minutes. After
yeah,
the minutes.
after the minutes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Didn't have myself.
Can I have someone approve the minutes? Bernie? All in favor? Okay, agenda, you wanted to add something, Robert?
Yeah, 11.6, non-bargaining staff.
Okay, any other additions? Or changes? Okay, so if we can have approval of the agenda as amended? Robert, all in favor? Thank you. Okay, board communications, there's nothing under there. So we'll flip over to number 8, Catholic Education, School Parish Relations Committee. Deacon Robert?
So there's nothing to report other than we're having an agenda setting meeting this Friday for our next meeting. When is our next meeting?
March 2nd.
March 2nd.
Okay, Mrs. Urban, division and school prayers.
So my report is attached, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Layton?
Just a comment, I'm very happy to see where that initiative is, where it's at. Thank you very much.
If I can just speak to that. So our student faith enrichment days that we're having, that's when they created their school prayer, and several schools went back, groups of students went back to their schools and said, can we pray our prayer today? So it was really nice to see it like actively being used in schools. So
And the division prayer, what's happening with that?
So I asked each of the 9 schools to give me a line or a kind of a theme, and then I crafted it perfectly into this prayer. But Tiana, thank you for your work making it look so nice. We haven't really decided where that will live or where we want to, how we want to share that.
Yeah, it's nice. It's really nice.
And what's kind of neat is one of one of the teachers was looking at it and she could see her line of the prayer. So I think the students will notice because they're so used to praying it.
Nice. Any other questions there for Deacon Robert or Heather? All right, that's good. We'll go on to the work plan, the school calendar. You sit here, Chuck. So
Yeah, so then last month we approved the 23-24 calendar and the board asked for, and we received a one draft of the 24-25 calendar. The board requested we put together a calendar that has the full week off in November, so that is draft 2. So a couple of things about this calendar, I guess. One is we start at both calendars start on the 26th. One of the numbers that I have to pay very close attention to, and this was after some input from the high school, specifically administration in high school, was careful of the number of days, instructional days in semester 1. And obviously, if we're getting more days off in November, then that became a bit of an issue. So you'll see in that draft 2, we have 89 days instruction in semester 1 and 92 days in semester 2. So that's just a little bit of a change there. Both, as you can see, both calendars start after the long weekend, and that's the 3rd. I think that's appropriate. Again, the big change, one calendar has a full week in November and one calendar has 2 instructional days in November. As far as input, this, by the way, this did go out to all staff, to administrators. I sent out and I said, here's the second, here, I explained what the board asked for, and I sent it out to administrators saying, please share with whom you see appropriate, and I'm open to all feedback. I didn't get a whole bunch of feedback. One school sent me feedback that said they preferred the full week off in November. So really, I didn't see a bunch of feedback other than that.
Mr. Lee?
Mr. Howard, remind me what the red.
Faith Day.
Thank you.
And they're both starting after the
3rd.
3rd.
Had some discussion with Medicine at 76. They're not quite there yet. My understanding is that they would be starting on the 3rd also.
Okay, has everybody had a chance to look at 1 and 2? So, any discussion? I prefer 2. I prefer the November break for kids, but that's what I'm going to go for. So, go
Now
ahead.
I've just confused myself because I closed them both.
Oh,
Which one had semester 1 is 89 days?
Semester 1, 89 days was the one giving full November weeks, number 2. That was the 89 days.
anybody else have any comments?
I prefer number 2. I'm ready to move that we adopt draft calendar 2.
So we'll just put that in there, that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Catholic Board of Education approve the draft 2 school calendar as presented for 24-25 school year. Okay, so Robert has moved that. Any discussion on that? All in favor? Passed. There, that was quick.
That was quick.
All right, 9.2, 23-24 budget assumptions.
Thank you. So as part of the outset of the budget process, the Board of Trustees approves the 23-24 budget assumptions. These were presented back in January, and we have revised them based on the discussion, and they are re-presented for consideration at this meeting. The recommended motion is that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education approve the 23-24 budget assumptions as presented. With regards to the budget assumptions, we've streamlined them. The major aspect is to build the salary increases into the budget for the staff who are under a collective agreement, in addition to any finalized amounts for those staff not under a collective agreement. Enrollment for the funded and international students are to be determined using the school's reasonable assumptions. Within transportation, we would build in the deferred cameras and GPS project to be established for the 23-24 year. There would be a fall retreat with the Board of Trustees and school administrators. There would be a budget for a contracted fundraiser to fundraise for the board's theater strategic priority. The effects of the potential adjustment to the learning services department arising from the review would be included into the budget. So Hugh touched on that back in January. And then all other programming to remain as in place. So that's the starting point for developing the 23-24 budget, as I understand, based on the discussions back in January. I think Mr. Mestel has a question.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Chair. To Greg, with regard to item number 3, the deferred camera and GPS system, how long has that been as a budget assumption? I seem to recall that it's been on there for quite some time.
It has been. This is probably the 4th or 5th year that it's been there. I think based on a situation that developed that the superintendent and I resolved with the parent, having cameras on the bus would have been very desirable. In fact, this occasionally happens. So I think we're at that point where we need to bite the bullet and ensure that at least the cameras are installed.
Well, that kind of takes away my thunder. That's what I wanted to say. I know that this has been a subject of previous budget overruns where you have to cut things that are in the budget, and unfortunately, this has been one. I think it's important, and I think I would ask my fellow trustees to place that high on the list of priorities as a project for 23-24. I will retell a story not a story. It's an event from a previous ASBA meeting where a school board who has these cameras on their buses showed a bus on a rural road with the stop sign out, and the kids were coming off the bus, and a car went blazing by them at highway speed. Being that they had cameras on the bus, they were able to identify the vehicle and to deal with the driver of that vehicle for gross negligence on the highway. Now, this wouldn't cover that. I understand that, but I think it's still important to have cameras on the bus as a safety item. And I would encourage my fellow trustees to lend their support and their voice to make sure that we get this project done this year.
The question to Mr. McPherson, which envelope would this come out of?
For the transportation, would come out of the transportation budget.
Okay.
As it currently stands, the transportation budget is in a deficit. But we are aware that the transportation review that Alberta Education has undertaken, it will be operationalized as part of the 23-24 budget cycle. So we expect to have new transportation budgets that hopefully will be more aligned with what our student enrollment is on a go-forward basis.
And two additional comments, Madam Chair, if I may, related to number 4. I see the benefit of having a fall retreat. I personally encourage administration that when they develop the budget for this, that I don't see a need for us to go away to Cypress Hills or something like that, we can do it in-house type of thing. And the second thing is I don't know, the decision the board had made re the allocation of any profit from the international education program, because that was a board motion. Am I correct in just assuming that's gonna be rolled into the budget as?
Yes, yeah. No, that's a good point. So even though the board made a decision last year to allocate a portion of the international education profits to learning services, the intention was only for one year. So we will revert back to the previous motion. So no, that's a good point.
I just had one, it's back to the cameras. Who owns those? Us?
If we're going to pay for it, we will.
Okay. Because they're gonna be on Southland's buses, right? But we own them like it.
And just, sorry, Madam Chair, and just, Mr. McPherson, for the benefit of anybody who might be watching now or later replaying it on YouTube, could you explain what the GPS project would allow parents to do, please?
So what we are looking at with the initial with the initial look at this, all students would be assigned a swipe card. So as students get on the bus in the morning, it would automatically detect it, or there'd be a swipe. And that would give information to us on exactly who is on the bus. So if there's ever an instance on a missing student or student getting on the wrong bus, we would be able to identify that. What it potentially would allow for as well, although there are some nuances around that we would have to determine, the parents would be able to locate where the bus is on the route. So if,
On an app kind of thing.
yeah. So if mom's one or dad is one, waiting for the student to come home, they can see exactly where the bus is. And
Or on a very cold day when it's whatever, and there's been an announcement on the radio that the buses are running late, and you can't see your bus stop. You look on the app and you'll be able to make an educated guess. Okay, Sally and Johnny, you can start to walk to the bus stop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
There are some risks around that we would have to walk down to ensure that only those eligible to know where that buses are receiving that information. That we wouldn't want potential perpetrators knowing where the buses are.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, is there any more comments? Oh, go ahead.
Chair, if I can direct this to Mr. McPherson. So in the previous draft board assumptions that I've seen, there was always item 1 had been the intention of various amounts for a surplus.
Correct.
Is there a reason we don't have a line like that?
Based on what I felt was the board's discussion last time, that was creating some controversy. So we've removed that, and then the board, as part of the budget approval, can determine how much of a reserve they would like to see.
So rather than proceeding with an assumption, that'll be discussed during the budget process.
Correct. So
Okay.
once we build the budget, know how much funding we're getting, what our expenses are, we would know what that amount is, and the board can make a decision that is sufficient or not.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, any other questions or comments? All right, would somebody like to move this forward? Mr. Mestel?
Madam Chair, I would move the adoption of the budget assumptions for 2023, 2024 as presented.
Okay, if there's no more discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Okay, we'll move on to information items. 10.1 Johnson Controls. Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. So the report is attached, and this is the year one measurement and verification report that we're receiving from Johnson Controls based on the project that we did it two years ago. So the report demonstrates that there were savings of just about $110,000 within the 21-22 year, which is $23,000 more than what the guaranteed savings from Johnson Controls were. So from a perspective of kilowatt hours, we saved just over 603,000 kilowatt hours of electricity, as well as 1,236 gigajoules on natural gas. So I think it's fair to say that the savings have demonstrated the success of the project.
Absolutely.
If not for these savings, the utility rates, which are already significantly higher, would be another $110,000 higher. So this has been a very positive aspect. There is also a positive impact on our CO2 emissions in that there was 609 tons of carbon dioxide. I'm not sure exactly what that translates to, but Johnson Controls was fortunate to indicate that that is 131 passenger vehicles driven for one year. So that's
Wow.
that's an awful lot of CO2 savings. As a reminder, this project was funded through the $2.5 million CMR grant and $517,000 from the IMR grant. So I think it's fair to say that this has been a very successful project for us and has provided for a better learning environment for our students with LED lighting.
How is it like in the schools now? Is the temperatures more even? Like, because remember there used to be some that were really cold and some that were really hot.
There's still variances. When you get to older buildings and large buildings, it's hard to maintain it. One of the big things, though, is that we're better able to adjust the temperature from offsite. So instead of going in and adjusting the boiler, we can make those adjustments, from home or from the office. So that's better. And I think overall there's a more level heating, but it's in individual preferences change. And
No, I know that was an issue before, and
Yeah.
so I just was.
it is better.
Yeah.
But you're never going to be able to make a large building evenly heated that all people will enjoy.
Oh, no, you can't do that in your own family. Mr. Mestel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm very pleased with this report and the amount of energy saving that we have with the reduction in the carbon dioxide that we're releasing to the atmosphere. All excellent things, and plus the money that we're saving. The point of all of this is I want to acknowledge that it was our Secretary Treasurer who first put us onto this and brought this Johnson Control proposal to the board. That's been, how long ago was that? 5 years maybe? It's been quite a while.
Just sorry to interject, though, and I thank you for the compliment, but our superintendent put me on to this project.
You guys had done
Really,
this when you were before, right?
Yes.
So it's an excellent program, and I just want to extend my thanks to the people involved that brought this to the board's attention, because certainly we wouldn't have been made aware of it any other way. Just a concrete example of the diligence that our central office staff had in bringing things to the board and making us aware of things that make us look good and save us money. So thank you to all those involved in bringing it to the board's attention. And thank you to the board of the day that approved this.
Yeah, it's a good one. Okay, we'll move on to 10.2.
Guys, I have to leave, but keep your prayers up for my Mary, please.
Sending prayers with you. 10.2, draft Northwest Industrial Phase 1 outline. Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. So this is for information. The City of Medicine Hat is reviewing the draft Northwest Industrial Phase 1 plan. It's been circulated to the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education in accordance with the Municipal Government Act requirements. The Invest in Medicine Hat organization is hosting an information session on the plan on February 23rd from 7 to 9 at the Esplanade. And then there will be a statutory public hearing at a later date. The outline plan deals specifically with the industrial area, and in my opinion, as such, it doesn't provide for residential development or development with a large gathering area, and as such, I don't believe Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education would have a recommendation for feedback, because it would not immediately impact educational facilities. So I don't think there's anything for us to do, but I wanted to ensure that the trustees were aware of that plan. I did provide the evaluation of lands and buildings surplus to board requirements, which the board previously approved back in May of 2022, which identifies where our school reserve lands are currently allocated for Medicine Hat Catholic. So that's just as a reminder for trustees.
Any questions for Mr. McPherson? Okay, we'll move on then. You're still up there, Greg.
Oh, awesome.
3-year financial analysis.
Thank you. So the Board of Trustees for Medicine Hat Catholic requested that the audit committee analyze the last 3 surplus budgets to determine if there's any trends and present a report to the Board of Trustees. So attached is the report from the audit committee based on the work that they completed. That was done on January 20th. The report was predominantly prepared by the Assistant Secretary Treasurer. The major findings of the report center on the budget as presented on the audited financial statements is the budget, which was approved in May prior to the start of the fiscal year. And those numbers are not allowed to be adjusted for the audited financial statement. With the increasing volume of unique grants announced after budget approval, there are in-year increases which affect the year-end surpluses. Changes in enrollment affect many calculated grants. Combined with the transition to the weighted moving average in fiscal year 2021, there are automatic changes to revenue recorded after the budgets are set. Differences between the funding budget and the amounts received, such as enrollment in the early learning programs and clawbacks from grants due to COVID-19 created issues and obviously differences within the finances. There were a few accounting treatment changes. The infrastructure maintenance renewal, or IMR, the determination of the amounts expensed as opposed to being capitalized is completed in the fall after the budget is set. So that's more of a timing difference, but it does relate to how we deal with the accounting treatment. Weighted moving average and the hold harmless directions on the accounting treatment changed after the budget was approved, and that was based on direction from Alberta Education. Deferred revenue, that's the unspent portion of certain grants not recognized in total spent. So, for example, with the curriculum budget, we received $66,000 and $62,000 last year, but we didn't spend it, so it doesn't show up as revenue, even though we were possibly planning on spending it. So again, more of a timing issue. And then finally, the amortization of capital allocation. And that again comes back to more of a timing of the amortization expense being contingent on project completion. So while we're expecting the project to be completed within the summer, it may not get completed until September. So then it's into the next fiscal year. So those become challenges for us. There are other areas such as staffing where the announced grants generally require staffing adjustments. So when we get these new grants, which we're very grateful for, there are staffing impacts. So again, that impacts our expenditure side. We do have several external factors which are affecting our budget. Insurance rates continue to climb. Utility rates are continuing to climb. And fuel rates, predominantly for busing, is causing issues for us. Of course, we have the ongoing staffing factors such as illness utilization, maternity leave utilization, as well as extended disability utilization. So we estimate those early in the budget cycle, and then it's 16 months before we actually close, or 18 months by the time the year is done. So those all have impacts on the expenditure side. Local decisions on resources required within the year, where schools, or even decisions that we make as a board, impact certain decisions. So for example, if an ERIP is approved and it wasn't as part of the budget cycle, that creates those variances. So this was presented to the audit committee. It was agreed to present the report to the board in accordance with the board's wishes. So I can take any questions.
Any questions, comments? I'd like to thank Amanda for her hard work on this. She did a really good job.
I will pass that to her. Thank you.
Any questions, or we don't have to pass this, do we? No.
No, it's
Just
for
information, yeah. All right, let's move to 10.4. Terry, child development checkups.
Thank you. So I've just provided some information in my report regarding our annual child development checkup that will be held this year on April 28th at Holy Family Church. If anyone has any questions.
Somebody just asked me the other day, we did this, and I said, yeah, we do. Go ahead.
How do we advertise this to parents so that they can find out that this service is available?
On social media, we have posters. We're present in a lot of child care centers in our community, so we advertise that as well. So I'll rely on Tiana a lot again this year to make sure we get it out to the right families and within our schools, of course.
Do we get information from the health unit? How do we know how many children who are, let's say, less than 3 have been identified as having developmental delays?
So we work with Alberta Health Services, and they're typically the ones that would be supporting those children up till age 3, and they do a really good job of communicating with us. Families would select which school division that they're planning to go with, and then AHS would indicate to us that we have this family coming to us, whether it be at a child care center or at one of our schools, and we reach out to them and make that connection.
Yes, this is a great thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any questions for Terry? Good job there, thank you. Communications report, Tiana.
Thank you. Yeah, my report is attached, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Get to it. Go ahead.
Just a suggestion under the communications umbrella, so I'm not saying, Tiana, that this should be your job. I'm just saying that suggestion. How do we monitor websites, our division websites, in terms of broken links, out of date information, that kind of thing? I'm wondering if we have a process like that, or if every once in a while we have somebody comb through them to make sure that that's not an issue. I'm not saying that's your job, I'm just throwing that out there as something for the division to consider.
Yeah, I think it's definitely, sometimes it just, you come across it and then you fix it, and I
Right.
think it's a part to that. I'm taking over what has been built, and sometimes you have to, it's kind of a process, but yeah, it'd be nice if there was a kind of like a platform for that, but it's definitely more of like a manual thing, and sometimes I'll get an email saying, oh, like this link's broken, and we do our best to kind of resolve that, but
I remember our former executive assistant used to have a saying, fresh set of eyes. If, someone not associated with, let's say so I'm not gonna say a school because I haven't been to the website, but a fresh set of eyes to look at a school's website and say, well, you know what? This program you have really doesn't get the kind of coverage that it should. Like, you look at this thing every day for years, but this fresh set of eyes looks at it and says, we might want to make this more visible or whatever.
and I think with school-based websites, so I try to help with that, but at the same time, I try to give a little bit of freedom
Yes.
for the secretaries to kind of have. And I think with February registration, we kind of made it sure that, okay, go through your website, make sure that everything's up to date and
Right.
stuff like that. But yeah, definitely be very coming from for sure. It's obviously very important to have up-to-date links and information for sure. So
I know way back when Dr. Tatro used to encourage the principals to do that. That was a summer job,
Mhm.
that last, or at the end of June, make sure your websites are cleaned up because people are gonna be looking.
Exactly.
Anyway, I just thought I'd mention it. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Just very quickly wanted to highlight the donation of 6 Be Kind benches from Blue Wib. There's a picture in TMS report there. They're phenomenal benches, and we really do appreciate the donation that they made to us. Division.
I really like that they can move, that they're not just stationary, because I've seen some at schools like where they're outside, but they're cemented in, and that's where it is. But this can go where it needs to go. Yeah, that's a good thing. Deacon Robert.
Thank you for the analytics.
Yeah, of
I
course.
appreciate it.
I think I appreciate it, I don't know.
I know it's kind of a lot. I realize that, so there's a thing called Meta Business Suite, which basically handles Instagram and Facebook. And their analytics are very, stagnant. I feel like they're just kind of a graph, and it doesn't do a lot to explain, but I'm a visual person, and I feel like the PDF that they attach kind of does a good job and to kind of show, and I like how it also includes top posts as well, like what posts kind of that has been engaged with, and of course there are always a cute kids, so that's awesome. But yeah, no, I think this is from Hootsuite, which is a platform we use to kind of mass post things. So I thought that was a really neat thing that
Yeah, I like
is offered on
it.
there.
It made sense,
That's good.
and
Yeah.
I'm an old lady, it often doesn't make sense. So, Mr. Leahy.
I just reminded something that I thought of this week that I was very impressed with, and I don't know if it was you or I find that our social media is very responsive to events that happen, i.e., very quickly we had something up asking for prayers about Syria and Turkey. That kind of thing. So I just wanted to share a thanks that I noticed that and a recognition.
Yeah, very good job. Where am I here? All right, Mr. Leahy, a notice of motion for Sports Academy programming at Boy.
These 10.6 and 10.7 are just that, Madam Chair, notices of motion.
So that'll be for next meeting, right?
Yes.
I'm just trying to get rid of some stuff off my computer. All right. So that's 6 and 7. All right, action and discussion items. Mr. Zrichny just stepped out for Dr. Zrichny, sorry. Let's move down to 11.3 and then we'll go back to 11.1 when Dwayne comes back. So 11.3, Mother Teresa Restricted Reserve Use Request, Mr. McPherson.
Perfect. The Mother Teresa School is asking for the use of $8,000 from its school-based restricted reserve. They have $44,000 in the restricted reserve, which is sufficient to meet the request. The use of the restricted reserve is related to the implementation of a health and wellness program at Mother Teresa Schools for the 23-24 school year, where they're looking to transform one classroom into a wellness space, including a variety of tools, resources, and activities. And this money will be used as a startup for it. What we are proposing as the motion is be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education authorize the use of $8,000 from the Mother Teresa School Restricted Reserve for the implementation of a health and wellness program at Mother Teresa School.
Go ahead, David.
So I'd like to make that motion, and then I'd like to have a question, please.
Okay.
The question is, I wouldn't mind, just a report. I don't need them to come to. I'm very curious. First, good on them for taking this initiative. I'm curious to see more details about what exactly they're going to be doing with this program in more, detail.
Sure. Would you like that for the next meeting or
Well, sometime this spring.
in the spring? Okay.
We have them scheduled to present in May.
Okay,
Does that work?
that's fine with me.
When I read this, I sort of had that almost like that one at JP2, but on a bigger sense. So that's what was in my head as a picture. All right, we'll skip back to 11.1. Oh, sorry, we need a vote. Okay, David did the motion. You have a question?
Greg, can you remind me and perhaps us of how money gets into the restricted reserve from schools and what authority and what authorization might be the better word there, do schools have for using school-generated funds?
So the school generated funds is probably the easier one to answer here. They generally have a larger authority to use those funds. So we set up a budget as part of the budget cycle, but as the year progresses, they use those funds. So money comes in for fundraising, money goes out. The restricted reserve, however, is much more locked down. So in terms of how the funds are generated, the school receives a budget within their school-based decision model, so SBDM. At the end of the year, we take a look at their total expenses, deduct it from that SBDM allocation, and whatever is left, if it's a surplus, goes into the restricted reserve. If it's in a deficit, it comes out of their restricted reserve. We try to monitor throughout the year if they're going to be on target or not, and if they're not, they're going to require a pull from the restricted reserve, just like what's happening here. We would like to come to the board and ask for permission to access that.
So money going into the reserve is fairly easy, getting it out is a little more formal.
Yeah, mainly because the reserve is there for use, but like everything within the board, as we tap into those reserves, we want to give the board the authority to tap into it, to approve the release of the funds. Sorry, that's what I meant to say.
Okay, so any other questions? All right, we'll Call the question on that one. All in favor of that motion? Okay, we'll flip back to 11.1.
I apologize for
That's
getting
okay.
out.
That's okay.
Chelsea's just gonna call up, I have a
We
little
can
bit of a
move on.
presentation for us.
We just moved on.
So, in our board work plan, this is the time to do an overview of our plan, and then the board needs to begin thinking of changes that they want to make to that 4-year plan. Hopefully not significant changes with respect to the priorities, but certainly as items come up, there's adjustments that need to be made. As well, a number of the performance measures or the goals that were set out have been met. And so the senior admin team and the folks that are responsible for those areas will be adjusting them. But this gives us sort of that first blush discussion. And there are, at the end of the presentation, there's one item there that will have a potentially significant budget implication. And so this is sort of the first heads up for that discussion and to take that into consideration. So with respect to the priorities, our 4 priorities are there: Catholicity, mental health and wellness, quality teaching and learning, and facility consolidation. We have a 4-year plan in place from 2022 to 2026. That's reviewed and adjusted annually. And the idea there again is what we talked about in our discussion meeting, is that we sort of have the plan in place over 4 years so that there's stable and predictable work for our schools to focus in on. And then we determine through this process as well, are there any new areas or new priorities that may require funding? And so we'll jump right into that report. And so the first area is Catholicity. I have to apologize because some of the slides are a bit text heavy because there's a lot of things that have been happening in the jurisdiction. But we have a religious ed committee and also the student-led faith project, and that's sort of been merged together now, and that work is being done by that group together. So you've got staff and students on that committee working together. We have our school parish relations committee that's been meeting, and meetings have been going well. School administration and clergy from both parishes will meet in June, and that's being planned. Each school will host a sponsored Sunday Mass. Clergy are participating in classroom visits. Grade 1 class will visit the churches, take part in the tour and other activities. Our religious ed coordinator and parish sacramental prep coordinator will host grade 5 and 6 retreats. All division staff will participate in the March Faith Day. That'll have Mass in the morning and service projects in the afternoon. School staff will work with parishes to support and promote the sacramental prep. And religious education coordinator members of Knights Columbus work together to co-host the Created in the Image of God art show at Holy Family Parish. And so as we kind of go through these, if folks have any questions, just please stop me because it'd be hard to circle back after. So the performance measures for the second outcome: enhanced faith mission of staff. Religious Education Committee created a division faith plan for 22-23 school year. And so that's something that we are working on. Bishop McGrath has also indicated that he wants to have participate in that process as well from a diocesan level. And he's made that plea a few times out, and so we'll be working with him as well on that. Religious ed coordinator promote faith formation opportunities offered to Union College, St. Mary's College, as well as faith-based conferences, Spice Blueprints, and Congress. New teachers will participate in 4 half-day faith formation sessions. The coordinator will send out daily Advent and Lenten reflections. All division staff will participate in our opening faith formation day, which they did on the 25th. Junior high school staff members will be trained in the fall of 2022 on the pastoral guide, at which they were. Religious education coordinator, in conjunction with the religious ed committee, will explore type of faith formation activities that staff members are interested and work to increase those opportunities. Religion teachers will have access to release time to work collaboratively on religion curriculum planning. The third outcome there is that enhanced student faith formation through permeated Catholicity in our schools. So the coordinator will provide training on the effective integration of our Catholic faith across content areas. Teachers will be able to access release time to create lessons outside the religion curriculum that permeate their faith. Students and staff will develop a school prayer for each school division. The religious ed committee will develop a division prayer. The religious education coordinator and communications coordinator will create opportunities for the faith team and accompanying artwork to be shared both digitally and in person throughout the division community. And students will participate in monthly liturgy or religious celebration in conjunction with the liturgical year. And face-to-face retreat team will be hired to visit 5 schools in the 22-23 school year. Any questions on the first one? Great job.
Yeah, just a good job. Just, I really see and I hear from people that have nothing to do around this board table or anywhere. I hear about the kids being excited about their faith. And that's amazing. That's what you want.
So our second priority is mental health and wellness. And so it'll become a standing item for the DLT meetings. All staff will be encouraged to participate in health and wellness for PD. And schools will have health and wellness as a standing item for staff meetings. Schools will create health and wellness plan for their staff. Plan will include PD, communication, and opportunities for connection. And the division will allocate $40 per staff member for health and wellness. And this money will place in school budgets to support their activities. And so that would be one area that has a budget implication. If we see the value in that, to continue with that, we want to increase that amount to something for trustees to deliver.
What do they do with like that $40 per staff member? Can they put it together to be like a presentation?
Yeah, so some schools can just lump it together if they want. Others have different activities that go on through the months that they do. Yeah, that part is completely up to them.
That's good.
Outcome number 2, the Health and Wellness Committee led by wellness champions across the division. So the committee will meet quarterly, will include wellness champions from each school as well as senior admin. The Health and Wellness Committee members have the opportunity to participate in PD to support leadership in this area. The committee will organize a PD Day for November 7th, which was done, and the Health and Wellness Committee will communicate information each month to inform all employees of best practices in health, wellness topics, including spiritual, physical wellness, social wellness, financial wellness, occupational wellness, and work-life balance. And the third outcome is a 3-year health and wellness plan created by the Division Health and Wellness Committee. And they're working on that plan, and it'll include monthly calendar events, health and wellness information tips, ACVP benefit updates, and usage tips, and all that information is shared monthly division-wide through email. And the third area, and probably one of the larger areas for us, is quality teaching and learning. So the first outcome staff have explored and expanded their repertoire of effective and responsive planning, instruction, and assessment practices that inclusively support access, engagement, growth, and success for all K-12 students. So performance measures there, the ISP strategies template would be aligned with the UDL strategies for teachers to utilize and problem solve for students. Students have participated in the Learning Loss program, assessing literacy and numeracy skills, and will plan for intervention support. Videos we've created for staff around the new ISP system and how it relates to UDL. 2 PD development sessions with each elementary school staff will be held around the ISP and UDL guidelines. And these will be looking at identifying barriers, responsive planning, and instruction to allow for access to curriculum for all. Professional development will be held for the DLT to increase their understanding of UDL guidelines, including UDL look-fors. Monthly emergency response discussions will be held at the DLT meetings. Students are supported in a variety of ways to achieve individual success. Students feel supported in their learning and achievement by their teachers, support staff, admin, and other support workers. And so this is one area that, well, the whole strategic priority is going to come under review, but this one probably will have a fairly significant change in the goals moving forward, because after the review is done and the recommendations that come forward to that, once everyone has had eyes on it, we'll be rewriting a lot of the work within this area. Outcome number 2, children entering grade 1 have experienced opportunities for emotional, social, intellectual, and physical growth as a result of participating in inclusive, accessible, developmentally appropriate early learning programming. So child development checkup day will be held in the spring for young children entering early learning programming or kindergarten. Ongoing screening will continue within our school and community-based programs in order to identify children requiring early intervention. Collaboration will continue with early learning teams regarding providing further universal support in developing skills in the areas of communications, regulation, gross and fine motor skill development. Finally, PD opportunities have and will be continued to be provided from the Alberta education curriculum. Third one is leadership opportunities are provided for division leaders, those serving in formal leadership positions, as well as those teachers striving to improve leadership potential. Performance measures include interested teachers will be given opportunities to become new mentor teachers. Division will provide monthly PD development opportunities for formal division leaders. Leadership enhancement program will be established for teachers not in the formal leadership positions. This program will allow teachers to enhance leadership skills around Catholicity as well as the LQS. And interested teachers will meet quarterly. Sessions will include faith leadership, instructional leadership, and then the elements of the teachers listed there. Finally, the fourth outcome, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit students are supported in the division, and students and staff are educated about truth and reconciliation. And so here we see students and staff take part in educational activities to honor the National Day of Truth and Reconciliation, as well as additional activities throughout the year. September 30th will be dedicated as an instructional day for the schools to develop and provide specific instruction and activities for reconciliation related to residential schools. Division will recognize Indigenous Peoples Day in June of 2023. Division staff will participate in First Nations, Métis, and Inuit professional development opportunities, such as the blanket exercise, and the division will hire a full-time Indigenous support teacher to provide educational materials, activities, and opportunities to all staff across the division.
Greg, I'd like to interrupt you there. Has that blanket exercise been done in the division?
A number of them have taken place, yeah.
And any of the board members seen that? Are you familiar with what that is? It's a very moving event or presentation. I was going to suggest that we conduct that here at the boardroom or at the board table sometime for all of central office, if we could arrange that, because it really is a very moving presentation. So I'll just pass that on as an idea.
How many students do we have, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit? Do we know?
Approximately 120.
That's who I have identified, right? Because some are and they don't say anything.
When was the last time you did a blanket exercise at central office?
In May last year.
It was just done in May,
For central office, yeah.
central office.
What I can do if there's another one being held at one of the schools, we can just let the trustees know. We can
Yeah, that's
join
good.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be
It's a very moving experience.
We've just completed, we did a thought exchange around our Indigenous support in the division, so what I can do is share that with the board. Some of the feedback we received.
Thank you.
Finally, our fourth priority is the facility consolidation. And these ones now, of course, have drastically changed because of our capital plan submission. So what we had planned when the document was created last time, and then the capital plan submission,
Changed it all.
we're fairly wide apart on that. So this will be an area that needs to be restructured in totality. But we had looked initially at a document containing stakeholder input about programming infrastructure needs and a new school development at the St. Francis Xavier School site. So feedback and engagement with staff be collected for each report. Request for proposals for an owner representative will be completed, and the owner representative will provide the division with expertise in cost management, construction methods, project management, and project completion, among other duties. And then the second outcome was a plan outlining the public consultation opportunities for the project. All stakeholders will be asked to engage in division vision process, surveys, town hall engagement sessions, discussion meetings, meeting with the city, possible partnerships with the city, and the process that the division need to go through to bring a new development to the Monsignor McCoy St. Francis Xavier site. So while some of this has happened, certainly with, if we get an announcement from the Alberta government that they're funding the project, then we'll sort of have to work within their guidelines and timelines with some of that. Or if we're given the exploratory dollars to go through that work, then elements of this would come back in to do the visioning and value scoping and so on. So the next steps for us are to have a preliminary discussion, obviously not a very deep discussion today, because we wanted to share sort of what was supposed to have been done and how most of it was completed. However, the board does need to make a decision with respect to our current capital plan and if there are any outcomes that are needed. Particularly, one is because we will be submitting that plan at the end of March. Great. Yeah, and so if the timeline for it, of course, doesn't work very well for us. And we've talked about this at previous board meetings because we may not know until the middle of March one way or the other. And it doesn't leave us a window of opportunity to change the plan. So our recommendation would be that we would leave it in place for another year. And if it goes through, then that gives us time to begin identifying other capital projects, and we have essentially a year to put that plan together to be submitted. Or if it doesn't get approved this round, then it's already in line again for next year. So that would be our recommendation. And then the other part there, again, is just to start thinking about the 4 areas that we went through, and are there specific things that we'd like to see developed as outcomes or that are coming to mind. We've got a bit more time with that plan, but this is sort of the first blush. The only one area and I shared that with trustees, I purposely didn't include it as an attachment on the agenda because while I reached out to a number of vendors and asked them to provide the document that you received, some got back to me and said that they're already busy and they don't have the time to take on another project. One of the folks that we've worked with before indicated that they don't do that type of fundraising. However, I saw you emailed them back asking for recommendations and I didn't get any more from them. So we have one right now, and it's not necessarily even a recommendation to go with that person, but it'll give the trustees an idea of what a capital campaign would look like and what the costs associated with it would be, assuming then that if we want to go forward with that, we have a ballpark idea of what a budget for that process would look like, and then I would, for the next little foreseeable future here, try to get a few more bids in. So that's why I didn't attach it for public consumption, because it wouldn't be fair if someone else is going to put together a proposal to sort of see what another vendor had put together. However, you'll notice that you had 2 packages. One was a feasibility study, and then the other one was the actual campaign. And the vendor that submitted this strongly recommends to do a feasibility study. And what happened during that process is they would reach out to 40 or 50 different community members that would be the sort of the potential big donors for this to see are they aware of their project, what's their interest level in it, how committed would they be to doing that type of a donation. And so it has nothing to do necessarily with the building, it's more just are there people out there that would be willing to make a significant donation. In this vendor's experience, they indicated that a city the size of Medicine Hat should very, I won't say easily, but it would not be unrealistic to look at a $2 to $4 million fundraising goal. There's enough business and families in the city that in her experience, that goal would be attainable. So it isn't an issue of the availability of funds. And her perspective, it's an issue of are people engaged with the idea enough that they want to give the money back. And so she has, I think it's in the package if you read it, 30 years experience. She's fundraised in excess of $100 million. So she's got experience doing this type of work, and she's confident that a project in this scope, that you could easily raise that money. But she strongly recommended doing the feasibility study because, in her words, you didn't want to get too far down the path and realize that there may not be as much interest as you thought. And by that time, you'd invested a fair amount of money. She did indicate, however, that you don't have to do it. And some organizations feel confident that the donor base is there and they don't bother with it, but her recommendation would be that would be the place to start. So that one, I think the cost of it is similar to what we had spent on the previous organization that we had did some work with in terms of the initial visioning and so on. The second part is the actual campaign. So there's a timeline there with respect to what it would look like in running over the course of, nearly 2 years. And so the bulk of the work would be done in the fall and stretching over the course of the year. I believe in there, she indicated that they would like to have at least 60 to 70% of the funds raised before they went public with the campaign. And at that point, the idea there is that the promotion of the fundraising is to sort of get the ball over the goalpost at that point. So you help us finish this. And so in her experience, that's the timeline that it would take to raise that amount of money. And you can tell by the budget that was established there that the process it's not cheap. You're looking at several $100,000 a year during the course of that. One of her recommendations was that once you get into the meat and potatoes of the process, while she would be helping the process, in her experience, she recommends that you would hire a half-time person to manage that process. Actually here in Medicine Hat, because there's a lot of work that needs to be done on the ground. And according to her, it can't be managed off of the corner of someone's desk, that you'd have to dedicate time to that. But so I guess with respect to that, then sort of having an idea of the cost of that process in totality. When we look at our budget, there's 2 areas potentially that could be assigned to. The first one is the 5% allotment for central office, because it's a jurisdictional project and essentially administrative in the process. The second area could be POM. However, both areas would need money to be transferred in, because within the current budget, there's no money at that level to cover the costs.
Mr. Leahy?
Couldn't the portion of the profits from international education, once it's reallocated next year to the, I'll call it the SCSL project, be used to fund that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, because half of that goes to religious ed, right, and half goes to the CSL.
We still have to find other dollars in addition to that, though, to cover the expense. So I'm very excited. In talking with her, she's got tons of experience. She was very excited. She said, that amount is not impossible for Medicine Hat at all. It's just whether or not people have the appetite to give the money towards that. But she was very positive. She's also willing, if the board would like to meet with her and pummel her with questions on the process. that would be great, but, you know, I didn't want to bring it here because it'd be a bit presumptuous that that's the person that we're going to go with.
Because you're still gonna look, right, for other people.
Yeah, there's not a lot of the professional fundraisers work for, you know, like the Lung Association and those types of things. You know, I was, in a bit of work to find a handful that I found, but, and also trying to find people that are working in Alberta because the travel costs, you know,
Mr. Leahy,
Just a question, to Mr. McPherson, and I apologize that I'm asking you this off the. So for a cost of about $24,000, is this something that we're required either by policy or provincial or federal legislation with having a competition or a tender process? Or can we just award this feasibility study?
Within the 24,000, we are well below the TILMA agreement on international or internal trade. Sorry, the Northwest trade agreement. We're below that threshold, so we can do a sole source, and we have the backup to show that we canvassed a variety of other businesses and didn't accept them because they were busy.
go ahead.
I think I'm in favor of the expenditure of the necessary money from what I saw in the document to do the preliminary study. Why? Because I think it will help answer some questions that have been out there about, you know, can we raise the money? Is it possible? Is there interest out there from these, you know, 30 to 40 people or organizations or corporations that we will help her identify that she will talk to, not us. So it might be more comfortable for some people to talk to her versus one of us. And then we'll have the information.
Because when you and I were just doing it kind of off the cuff, not really knowing what we were doing, there was a lot of interest out there.
There was, but once again, that's kind of like anecdotal. Like we didn't have anybody say no, and we had.
Yeah.
And I think part of the success of that is that we made very clear when we went around that we weren't asking for money right then. And that was an interesting approach because we had people kind of say,
We'll give you money, even though we don't want it.
Yeah, so I'm in favor of doing this process just to answer those questions. And just to be clear, we're just talking about the theater, right? We're not talking about the wellness center or the clubhouse, okay? So I'm comfortable with that too.
Deacon Robert?
So help me to understand what we're doing. So we're fundraising for a theater. We're not sure what's happening with our proposal, our capital plan with the government that may pay for a theater. So we're going to fundraise, like the theater cost that I believe that we were looking at prior to the capital plan was like 8 to 9 million, was it not? And so, like, what we're hearing is for a city this size, we could potentially raise 3 to 4 million, which isn't even halfway there. So I think though, Deacon Robert, with respect to that project, we would only be looking at building a theater. Yeah. And it'd be designed in a way that all the other, because when we had, I think, scoped out the cost of those things, they were including the physical literacy space and the change rooms and all that, all in. And so we would just be looking at the theater component, but do it in such a way that, you know, it's easy to add on over time. I guess my concern is we may not be able to raise enough money. And will we be happy with the project in the end?
I think those are, through the chair to Deacon Robert, I think those are valid questions. I also think that in putting together the adding machine numbers, let's say there's the 3 million. We've got the approximately, $500,000 from the sale of St. Louis. We've helped me, Mr. McPherson, I think allocated about $300,000 for the retrofits of 3 classrooms at McCoy fit into there. So rounded off, that's about another $1 million there. So we're up to 4 million. And then you have the Friends of McCoy who have set a goal to raise $1 million, which hopefully would get matched. I said hopefully. So now we're up to what, 5 or 6? And then that would get matched by community enhancement, CFIT, and then that, which can be up to $1 million, and then you'd be up to 7. But I want to emphasize, Deacon Robert, there was hopefully in some of those numbers too.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to repeat myself from previous meetings. I was struck by something Dr. Zarichny had said a couple of meetings ago when he brought up this fundraising idea. And then I said to myself, well, what are we waiting for? Because if we get the project, I suspect the government may come to us and say, you asked for this, but we're going to do this. And there might be some things we might want to put in another gym. Like I look at websites and all that. I went to Graham Construction's website the other day and I looked at the Medicine Hat High project, and this is on Graham's site. They've got the biggest gym in Alberta there. Well, we know that Alberta Education didn't pay for that, I don't think, based on what we've been told. So that money had to come from somewhere. And I know also credit to 76 Medicine Hat High School. They got their own money to build that track that they have there. So so even if we get the project and if we do some fundraising, it'll help pay for some of the enhancements we can put in. If we don't get the project, and hopefully this board continues to have as a strategic priority the construction of a theater at McCoy, then we'll be on our way to raising the funds for that theater. So.
Mr. Kinch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share some of the same concerns that Deacon Roberts has raised. I've heard the number as 10 million, and that's what I've got stuck in my mind. And well, Trustee Lady's projecting some nice gains, but they're all if, maybe. And it would be a difficult thing for us without fundraising to attempt to raise $10 million, let alone with the fundraising if we're only going to 3 to 4 million. But additionally, I wouldn't want, and I've stated this before, I'm very much in favor of McCoy getting a theater. I think they're long overdue for such a thing. However, I don't think we can afford to burden our district in the attempt to get a theater. And we have to look at it and go, okay, what are the opportunity costs? Where are we going if we don't get approved, we don't get funding? How can we do this? And I know this is the first step, and I don't really have too much of a problem, a little bit, but not too much, saying let's go forward, because we can't sit on our hands the whole time. But that's a lot of money. And the other thing is, we can't build something that's second rate. I don't want something that is only going to serve most of the need. It needs to be built in such a fashion that it's a true theater. I'm not in favor of pulling out a bunch of bleachers. So I'm just throwing that out there as a statement.
I think one of the flip sides of it, though, is that if we do get the project, then you have a chance to, one of the a handful of theaters that I've seen have collapsible floors where the seating inverts and then you get a gym floor on the other side. And if we were awarded that school, then that gives us another gym space to be used when it's not being used as a drama, for drama, because it won't be used all day for drama. And so I think it's very exciting. I think the feasibility study is well worth letting a look at, because you'll know exactly, because in the word of this person, like if she doesn't think that she can do it, she's going to be honest, because it's her credibility that's on the line, And so she's going to do that deep dive to see exactly what the appetite is. And maybe it's $1 million, then the board has to decide, do they want to invest? The cost of raising $1 million or the cost of raising 4 is going to be exactly the same. So that'll be a decision that the board has to make at that point.
Deacon Robert.
So I think it's prudent to do the feasibility study. When will we be looking for a motion for those funds, or roughly?
Well, if it's the will of the board to get started on that, then I don't think there's much time to waste. We can get that process going relatively soon.
So what was the total for the feasibility study? Was it 27,000?
No, it was
24, I'm not.
the estimate was $28,350, including tax.
David, you want to make that motion?
Sorry, you scared me.
Chair,
Go ahead, sorry.
just clarification and curiosity. So where is that money going to come out of if we approve to do that? Where is it directly going to come at this point? Or is that yet to be determined?
We haven't looked that far, but we're going to research.
One option could be, if the board's willing, there's about $52,000 left in the the international ed money earmarked for religious ed. So we could take the $28,000 from that portion.
There are no plans at this time to spend that money?
We've taken $12,000 out for the Marked by God conference, $25,000 for the Student Faith Leadership Program, and an additional, I believe that's $16,000 for the incremental cost for the chaplain, which leaves, based on the first quarter numbers, about $52,000 left.
So how much of that is SCSL money?
Zero.
Zero. The SCSL money was used for the learning services.
Okay, oh, that's last year's budget. That's,
Heather, what else do you have on the boil?
Well, the only other thing that I was going to talk about next month is the faith staff enrichment afternoons have really been well received, that we had 10 teachers last time. So I would plan to request some money to help with those sub-costs, but it won't be the amount that Greg just said, that Mr. McPherson just said. So
Like about $20,000?
yes, definitely.
Deacon Robert has hand up.
I'm not in favor of raiding our religious ed fund. I think it sounds like we have a healthy enough reserve to cover this cost. We don't have a lot of money to work with within educate or religious ed, and I think we have some really excellent opportunities to enhance the faith development of our division, and I'm not in favor of it.
Mr. Leahy?
Or
were you first?
I think nobody was ready this weekend. I thank Deacon Robert for that, so I've changed my mind on the vote here, and I would encourage senior administration and Mrs. Urban not to feel compelled to spend that $52,000. And if it results in a carryover, then that's fine too. That's money we can find next year. So I would be prepared to move that the trustees of the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education approve the contracting of a feasibility study for theater, for fundraising for a theater at Monsignor McCoy High School for a total of $29,000. And that administration be directed to find as much money of this as possible within budget centers throughout the division, and saving that, take the costs out of reserve.
Okay,
So like going through and saying, okay, listen, you know, we're halfway through the year, this budget's at 30%, boom, we can move it over.
okay, you had a comment.
Yes, so again, I'm in agreement with Deacon Robert. I think our primary goal is our Catholic education of students. I just can't abide by taking that money away because that diminishes what we're doing and what we're all about. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with Trustee Leahy's motion only because it's rather nebulous and it's not saying the money will come from here or there. It's kind of like, let's see if we can patchwork this together. I think we need to take it from some spot. I don't know if the monies we've set aside from international ed is in restricted funding and we can't access it. If not, then I would suggest that would be where we would take it from.
Yeah, or I was thinking, can you, and I don't know if you can do this, but if we took it out of the reserve, can we pay that back with our funding for next year from the international aid? Can you do that kind of stuff? I can do that at home, but there's only
Yeah. The short answer is yes, but the way that we're set up based on what the trustees wanted, the surplus is
the place.
to be used. The
Okay.
surplus from international ed, so
Yeah.
you can't take the money twice. So,
Okay,
but as just for clarity, the international ed money is within current year operations, so it's not in the restricted reserve at this point. It's at the end of the year, if there's any monies left, it would go into restricted reserve. But right now, it's in general revenue. We have it earmarked for two specific purposes, but the funds are available for use within the current year if that's the board's will.
go ahead.
So again, so just for clarification, that money then would be available. We could access it also because it's really for the same project. We're just saying we're going to spend it now as opposed to hold it.
Yes, the nuance on that was the international ed money is split into two pools. Half of the year-end surplus is supposed to go to the SCSL and the other half into religious ed. The SCSL money has already been allocated to learning services, so that only leaves the religious ed component, of which there's about $54,000. So there's funds available.
Is there, and I think we'd asked this question previously, what is our surplus that's available?
The projected end of the year unrestricted reserve is about 423, of which we're tapping into potentially a portion of that based on item 11.6.
Oh, can we just say that we're going to take it out of the reserve? Can we just say that?
The motion doesn't say that. but
No, I know, but I'm just,
Well,
can we change
Trustee
it?
Lady is willing to amend this
Okay.
motion.
I think Trustee Lade's motion is a sound motion. He's saying we can take it out of the reserve, but if there's other budgets that have surplus, that we can draw from there and then not to draw down our reserves. So it may sound nebulous, but I think it's a solid motion. I support the motion.
What do you think, Mr. Mestel?
I agree. I think, but the chances of finding money in other budgets are probably pretty slim because that money's going to be used up. I don't think that we can't delude ourselves to think that we can find money in other budgets, in other budget lines. If the money's available in reserves, and that's where it needs to come from.
But your motion would still stand.
My motion would still stand.
Yeah.
And once again, it's, just a comment. We have, based on the evidence of our schools, reserve accounts and so on, very good managers at our schools. And, so I'm not saying that there hasn't been, I'm not saying there's fat out there, I'm not saying that. It's just that there may be, in our $34 million, areas where, you know what, this didn't happen, or whatever, travel, perhaps, like, you know, we've got X thousands of dollars left, and, ooh, that's $5,000, that's, we don't have to take that $5,000 out of the reserve.
Okay, well, I think it stands. So let's vote on it and see what happens. Unless there's any other questions or comments about so it's take it where you can find it or the reserves. Oh, sorry?
I'm sorry, I don't mean to prolong this. I think rather than just saying, well, hopefully, maybe, there might be, perhaps at the end of the year, there's extra money. But, you know, occasionally we have run into situations where we're in a deficit situation and those funds get spent. And I don't think we can necessarily count on extra money left over from somebody else's budget. If it's there, great, awesome. It's a wonderful thing that we have access to that. But I think we might as well take it from where it's available right now without impacting anyone else. And then if there is money left over, well, that's probably going to end up in the same pot anyway. So as it stands, I'm not in favor of the motion as it's worded.
So can you say the motion again?
Gee,
You have,
Approve contracting of a feasibility study for fundraising for theater at Monsignor McCoy for $29,000 with senior administration finding money within the budget centers, within the division budget, or use the residual coming from the unrestricted reserve for the retained balance.
and just to, without adding more verbiage to the motion, my sentiment is that administration wouldn't go to school budgets. It would be central office budgets, you know, that kind of thing. So, you know, I don't want you going to schools and saying, you know, it doesn't look like you're gonna spend all the money you put aside for whatever, so we're gonna take that back. No, I don't want that, but.
okay, well, let's call the question and see if this motion passes. All in favor? Opposed? Passed. All right. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, now that it's passed, without speaking for the Friends of McCoy, as a member of the Friends of McCoy, I think we would be very interested in working with this individual and helping to come up with the names and so on, some suggestions of who that list of 30 or 40 people could be.
Well, we have that committee, right? Would that be, is that what you're talking about?
There's gonna be, as I understand it, it's gonna catch a wide swath of folks.
Okay.
So yeah, it's not a problem.
Right. All right, let's move on here. Dr. Zurichny, St. Mary's math competition trip.
So.
That was kind of neat.
We had a submission or a field trip request from St. Mary's School. There was Waterloo University, there's a math competition that's held every year. and it's a competitive entry. So there was interest in St. Mary's, they entered the students there, and they were accepted. So it's very exciting, actually. All of the contestants won are girls. So that's exciting. It sort of breaks the stereotype for mathematics. And so they've requested approval for a trip. It's to Waterloo, University of Waterloo.
Yeah.
April 10th would be the departure date, return on the 13th. All of the parents, there's 6 students that are going, all their parents are exceptionally excited, so I think they're all going along with their kids, plus we have staff supervising. So we've got a better than 1-to-1 ratio of supervision for the trip. The only costs associated with the trip would be for the students to go. The parents are paying their own way there, and not fundraising or anything like that for that. So we had our meeting with them, and it looks with respect to our requirements and the UP that they meet all of the requirements. Of course, they would give the final itinerary and all that prior to their trip. But we strongly recommend that the board approve the trip.
I was excited when I read it. And somewhere, did I read in there, or am I dreaming this? It's a high school thing, but these kids still qualify for it, right? That's so good. Okay, so we need to.
The story Samantha Johnson, isn't her?
All right, so we need somebody to move this forward. Okay, keeping Robert. All in favor? Okay, we've done 13.3. You were finished with that, right, Greg?
I was, thank you.
13.4, St. Michael's field trip fee adjustment.
Yes. So St. Michael's is planning a field trip on February 16th to go skiing. It's for the grade 5-6 students to Hidden Valley. When they put together their fee request, it was based on a $60 per student. However, the actual cost coming back from the hill is it's $67.50. So St. Michael's would like to approve from the board an increase to the school fee from $60 to $67.50 per student to cover those costs. So the motion is that the Board of Trustees would approve an increase to the Hidden Valley ski trip fee to $67.50 for grade 5-6 students.
Can I have somebody move? Oh, sorry, do you have a question?
I will move that.
You'll move it, Mr. Mastel. And all in favor? Okay, 11.5 is St. Pat's Volleyball Development Club. Mr. McPherson.
Yes, so for the 22-23 fees, St. Patrick's School is looking at adding a fee. They are looking to run the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education Volleyball Development Club, which would be open to all Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education elementary students. They're looking to charge a $30 fee, which would cover costs such as a t-shirt, pizza party, tournament awards, and certain equipment repair and replacement at the school. It would be held after school twice a week for the month of March 2023. So the request is that be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for Medicine Hat Catholic approve a $30 per player fee for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education Volleyball Development Club hosted by St. Patrick's School.
Is this open to the public, or it's just our students?
It's earmarked for just our students. So I believe it's replacing the Catholic volleyball league that we previously had.
Oh, right. Okay, Mr. Leahy.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, all in favor? Okay, committee reports. ATA, Mr. Mastel.
There's 11.6.
Oh, I
That
forgot.
addition.
Sorry, Deacon Robert. 11.6.
Yeah, so I have a motion to put forward, and then we'll discuss it.
Okay,
Effective March 1st, 2023, all non-bargaining unit staff are to receive a 1.756% increase to their salary grid. The effect of the salary increase is to be funded from the accumulated operating surplus for 2022, 2023. Effective September 1st, 2023, all non-bargaining unit staff are to receive a 2% increase to their salary grid. So that's my motion.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Musto?
Thanks, Madam Chair. Greg, do you have a guess as to what the cost difference would be if we made this retroactive to the same date that the teacher's contract? Is that a fair question?
So if we make it retroactive to September 1st, 2022, the estimated cost would be about $125,000
Additional.
within the current year. From March 1st on, would be about 40% of that cost.
Say that again.
So 60% of 125,000.
So it's about $50,000 for the rest of this year. So from March 1st to the end of the school year, it would be about another $75,000 give or take to go retroactive to September 1st.
Well, I think this board has been in agreement that we offer the same contract to our staff as what the teachers got. And I don't think it's fair that we penalize them simply because we're late to the party on this. And are making this thing effective now instead of when we should have made it effective. I would move an amendment to that motion to make it retroactive.
Okay, we need a vote on the amendment. So all in favor of the amendment? 1. All opposed? Defeated. So then we go back to the original motion, yep, the March 1st one. Okay, so we're going back to the March 1st and September 1st increments. All in favor? All opposed? Passed. Okay, thank you, Robert Barbacha. Okay, committee reports. Mr. Mescal, negotiation committee.
Madam Chair, that item has been added to the committee of the whole,
Okay,
being that it's dealing with labor.
all right. QP, Deacon Robert.
Nothing to report.
Teacher board advisory, Mr. Kinch.
We have our next meeting scheduled March 1st.
Okay, support staff, Deacon Robert.
Nothing to report. To my recollection, we were trying to schedule a meeting in March, and I just haven't heard back. So I think we're meeting in March.
Okay.
That's sometime.
Thank you. QP, Mr. Leahy.
Thanks to Mr. McPherson, the minutes of our latest meeting are attached. If there are any questions, we will attempt to answer them.
Student board advisory committee, we haven't done this. Mr. Hellman is setting something up and I'm not sure exactly when. He's had quite a bit on his plate, so. Audit committee. I'm just gonna let Mr. McPherson do that.
Thank you. So the audit committee information was presented within the information report. So there's nothing further to report.
Okay, thank you. 12.8 Division Consolidating Planning Committee. That's what I was trying to think of the name of.
We have a meeting coming up on the 23rd of February. the agenda initially was just to take a look at our report to the community, but I think now, with the campaign feasibility study that will take place, we might try to add that person to the agenda.
Good.
So,
ASBA, Zone 6, Mr. Mastel.
Madam Chair, the next meeting is tomorrow. It's a virtual meeting. Unfortunately, I won't be able to attend. I have a business meeting in Saskatchewan that I have to attend tomorrow.
Okay. ACSTA, I attached some minutes there to this meeting. We just had a big thing on Friday, so that's why this got late. I just want to kind of point out that number 1 on that is the trustee PD opportunities that are online at Newman College are amazing. And if we really want to promote faith development, there's a certificate there for trusteeship, Catholic trusteeship. There's a certificate for Catholic teachers. There's about 15 different certificates that you can take there. And what's really neat about them is the first 4 courses of each certificate are the same. And then the last 2, because there's 6 courses, the last 2 you take specific to whatever the certificate is for. But once you've taken those first 4, you're good to go on any of the other certificates. We only need 2 courses for them. So it's kind of a really neat program. And yeah, and then the other thing on there that I wanted to point out is the election readiness. And then there's quite a bit of stuff on there, and I put most of it on the committee of the whole. The most important thing, well, I'll get to that when we get back to the committee of the whole. But to be election ready is really important, and to start meeting our current MLAs. And if we hear of names that are available or are letting their names stand, like NDP, or just completely nonpartisan, there's some questions in there that we're supposed to ask. So it's really good. Yeah, that's what I wanted to point out. Because actually I was on Zoom for 2 days, and it was really quite interesting, which is pretty good for me to say that. All right, Mr. Kinch, Education Foundation.
We met on the 10th, and we changed the constitution so that it would reflect the Alberta Gaming Commission's rules and regulations with distribution of funds. And that was passed after some discussion. And then the only other thing is mention that June 9th of this year will be the Ed Foundation Golf Tournament. There will be a fee increase from $130 to $150, primarily because of inflation, increased costs, and so on and so forth. And that would be my report.
Good, thank you. All right, and then Parent Association, that's me. And there's a couple of reports on their minutes. That always goes really well, the Parent Association. They're just such great people that come to that and work together and help each other. And Mr. Leahy.
I have a question.
Okay.
Based on the minutes for the January 23rd meeting. Item F.
The January one?
The January 23rd
Yep, got it.
meeting. Item F, the last sentence. The last sentence says the Premier did not know much about the consolidation, so the parent shared the results from the MHCBE survey, so the Premier was informed of stakeholder concerns and suggestions.
That's, the Premier told, the parent took that, what is it, the thoughts? Thought exchange.
We haven't released that.
Well, then they must have got it from school, because they took it to the Premier. And this is what the Premier said. I wasn't there.
I'd like to know how the person got the results of the survey that we haven't distributed yet. Like,
I'll
you
find
haven't
that
seen
out.
the results of the survey yet?
The only thing that I thought of trustee Leahy was that they may have been screenshotting as they go through the comments. They may have been shooting. They may have been capturing it off the screen as they went through each page of those comments. That's the only way that I think that they could do it.
Yeah, I'd like,
I'll find that out.
yeah, because frankly, if they had the results and there's people in this room who haven't seen them and they haven't been released, there's a serious problem somewhere.
I don't think that was said at that meeting.
They were shared with trustees though, right, with all, like, for that consolidation, like you guys had access to see them. Like that's who I shared it with, anybody on the division consolidation plan and trustees.
Okay, but they haven't been shared with any parents. No,
No,
so,
unless somebody shared them from that,
well, and that's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
Because if that happened, then that's a problem. Because that wasn't something, we want to share them. Frankly, I'm all in favor of sending the whole thing up. But anyway, I'd like to know more.
Okay,
about
I'll
that.
find out. I'll find that out. Thanks for bringing that up. It just, okay, and that's all I have there. TIBA, Mr. Mastel, or that's gonna be,
Hasn't met since our last meeting. The next meeting is the 22nd. I'm going by memory here, Greg. I think it's the 22nd.
22nd or 23rd.
Yeah, it's it'll be next week, I think.
all right. That's it, closing prayer. Keegan Robert.
All right, so rather than do this prayer here, I'd like to do the 3 Hail Mary devotion in honor and thanksgiving of the Blessed Trinity. And so let us begin in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. In honor and thanksgiving to God the Father, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In honor and thanksgiving to God the Son, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. In honor and thanksgiving to God the Holy Spirit, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou among women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners, now and at the hour of our death. Amen. And glory be in honor of Our Lady. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, world without end. Amen.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Dean. And that's adjournment. So we'll go back to the committee of the whole. Yeah. Let's see if anybody wants to have a break here for a second.